to this video log with me, Wayne, from SwimCycleRunCoach. Well, this week I promised I would review the book by Alistair and Jonny Brownlees entitled Swim, Bike, Run, Our Triathlon Story. And Jonny and Alistair are interesting to me more than perhaps some other coaches, because my son was 16 when Jonny was 17 and Alistair was 19. And the last race he ever did was the elite London Triathlon race, where he came out 9th with them in the swim, but after that couldn't quite cycle with them. He didn't have the musculature, and he said at the end of the race, "I will never run that fast. I know that I will never run that fast. And therefore, there's no real point in me pursuing elitism at triathlon. Get out the elite level, just enjoy my sport and do what I want, because I'm not going to make it." That's fair enough. We didn't know, and nobody did at that stage, that they actually were so good that they were going to beat the world within a few years. Fantastic. But how's their book? And I would like to look at it in a slightly different way. There's snippets that struck me as a coach are very important for all triathletes out there who are training. So I'm going to look at it slightly differently. I'm not just going to take a blanket look across the whole book. I'm going to take 3 little bits that explain to me their attitude and their training, and why their training is useful for others to follow. So the first little snippet I'm going to read you is from Alistair, and it's about his decision to train in Leeds and what he believes is necessary to succeed as a triathlete. And he says this, and it's just going to appear here as well. "I believe that the characters who are strong enough to succeed outside the system will be good enough to make it. The basis for a lot of success is that you take ownership of what you do. You choose the elements you want around you, you build the community and support systems you want. If you can make those decisions yourself, it makes you stronger. And that helps you race well. You stand on the start line and think, I'm 100% responsible for what I do here." And that's unusual in sports. In sports, often people try and rely on what other people do. And I think they decided very early on, and quite sensibly, that they were in control of their sporting prowess. And you have to remember, all the sports scientists in the world can't actually make you win. If that was the case, then America would have all of the winning triathletes, because they have the most money. Or in America, there is the most money. Or perhaps even somewhere like Russia. But that doesn't happen. So it's an important thing for, I think, athletes to believe, that they can take ownership of what they need to do to get where they want to go. Now, you might not be able to put into place exactly what Alistair can, but you can sort out and prioritise those things that are important to you. And once you do that, you'll actually stand on the start line as Alistair does and say, I'm responsible for this. I've done all I can to get where I am. That's the result I'm going to get. As a coach, obviously the training sections were of interest to me. And the second thing I'm going to quote you, and again it's going to appear here, is from Jonny, and it's about the intensities that they work at. Let me read it to you. This is from Jonny. "What sets us apart? I'm not certain anyone builds the intensity that we have. A lot of our sessions are significantly shorter and faster than those of our rivals. As an example, when we were on our warm weather training camp in Lanzarote in winter of 2011, we were running 400-metre laps in 64 seconds. Some triathletes watching couldn't understand it, because our pace during races is closer to 71 seconds per 400 metres. What that intensity gives us is the ability to react to moves in races and make them. If you want to run 10 kilometres in 30 minutes, it's not just about being able to run a kilometre in 3 minutes. You need to be capable of running it in 2 minutes 50 seconds too, because the pace will rise and fall during the race itself. And if you are used to running faster, then running at that steady pace becomes easier and more efficient." Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Run harder than your race pace. I think a lot of people in triathlon get into the thought that the long, slow run plus the threshold run is what you tend to do. And they miss out that element of racing, which says, no, we have to be able to pull ourselves along at faster than race pace in case we have to do that during a race. We don't want to get to a race and think, this is the fastest we could possibly go, and then someone puts in a spurt. Because mentally, you'll just be on the back foot. You won't be able to cope with it. And if you do raise your pace, you're mentally going to be thinking, I can only keep this up for a few seconds and then I'm going to die. which of course will be a self-fulfilling prophecy. And the last quote I'm going to read from the book is from Alistair again, but it's on a very similar vein about training paces. And the fact that I believe most people don't actually train at a high enough pace to be able to actually race at their best possible intensity. I'll read it here. Again, it'll appear on screen. You need to put in big mileage, and you need to be as efficient as possible. Your repetitions on the track enable you to run above race pace, and running above race pace makes it easier to run at that slower pace. If you need to win races with surges, you need that extra pace in your locker. You can get fit by training for 10 kilometres at race pace, but you will not be able to respond to moves or make decisive moves yourself. And that is a key element of all training that I think a lot of triathletes miss out on. They miss out on the fact that if you always run, swim and cycle at your race pace, or if you're doing it below that to get really fit, then anything above your race pace or anything that comes out of the blue knocks you off balance and doesn't enable you to complete your best possible race. And that's what training is all about. Training is actually enabling you to do your best in a race. Not to run a pace that you run in training, but you really want to push that envelope beyond that. You don't want to be restricted to what your long run necessarily is. You want to respond to other people, and you want to maximise your potential. And even if you're not going for Olympic, national or international gold medals, you actually want to be able to feel comfortable at your given pace. And the only way you can do that is to actually swim, bike and run beyond that. Now the book itself is written as an Alistair portion, a Jonny portion, and it swaps backwards and forwards like that. And I think it's written really nicely that way. You do see a dynamic between the two that is strained at times, but as a brother partnership, I think they have one of the strongest partnerships in sport, and it certainly serves them well. And the way they race is just fantastic. I want to go out there, I want to hurt myself, and if I'm hurting myself, I'm going to be hurting everyone else as well. Who should read this book? Well, I think any interested triathlete or sports person should, because it shows how you can get to the top through real work and real planning. And they have talent, of course, but I think their mental ability to keep on training, racing in the worst conditions and the best conditions is what really sets them apart perhaps from other people. Great physiology, yes. Great mentality, absolutely. Let's hope they go on for a number of years. I think it's going to be difficult, because I think, as Alistair found after the Olympics, as he says in the book, you can go astray when you've got some success. Where do you go from here? And he's got to find those targets, I think both of them do, because they're so good. They've got to find those targets that actually excite them once more. Okay, that's it. That's all for this week. It's still gorgeous weather. Every triathlon at the moment that's meant to be open water with a wetsuit is open water without a wetsuit. Train for it. If you're doing a triathlon soon, get in a lake without a wetsuit and make sure you're not out of your comfort zone on the day. Okay, see you next week. Thanks for watching.